Thank you, Dr. Suma. Our second session is on the topic epidemiology of diabetes and oral aspects. And the speakers are Dr. Sunil Kumar D. Sir and Dr. Sunit Sir. Panelists for this session are Dr. Narayan Murthy Sir and Dr. Anita Subappa Ma'am. Dr. Narayan Murthy Sir is currently working as a professor and head in the Department of Community Medicine, JSS Medical College. He has completed his undergraduation from Adi Chunchanagiri Institute of Medical Sciences, Bangalore, and MD in Community Medicine from Mysore Medical College and Research Institute, Mysore. He has 25 years of experience in teaching, healthcare and research in the field of community medicine and public health. JSS Medical College has secured first prize for 2 consecutive years in medical exhibition and health awareness activities conducted as a part of Sri Suttur Jatra Mahotsava under his leadership. We are privileged to have you here, sir. Talking about our second panelist, Dr. Anita Ma'am. Presently, she is reader in the Department of Periodontology, JSS Dental College Hospital. She has completed her BDS as well as her MDS from JSS Dental College. In the year 2018, she has pursued her career in oral laser application from Vienna and is currently a PhD scholar with a teaching experience of more than 20 years. She has many national and international publications on her name and is reviewer of many journals as well. Ma'am has completed many research projects on respiratory diseases and periodontitis, pregnancy and women health, skin, diabetes, herbal formulations, lasers, etc. We are honored to have you with us, ma'am. I now request Dr. Anita ma'am to introduce our speakers, Dr. Sunil Kumar D. Sir and Dr. Sunit Shetty Sir. Over to you, ma'am.
I welcome you, Dr. Sunil Kumar. He has completed his MBBS in 2006 from JJ Medical College, Davangere, and MD in 2011. He pursued his PhD in medical technology based smartphone application and management of diabetes mellitus in 2020 from JSS AHER. He has a teaching experience of more than 12 years, has 48 publications and 2 books on his credit. He is actively involved in many research products on diabetes and has been awarded as the Best NSS Program Officer for the year 2016-17 in recognition of meritorious services rendered in the field of NSS. I welcome you, sir. I think it would be a very good jugalbandi of both you and Dr. Sunit, whom I'm going to introduce next. Can you put in the next slide? Dr. Sunit Shetty has completed his BDS from STM Dental College, Dharwad, and MDS from JSS Dental College Hospital. He's working as our assistant professor and in the Department of Conservative Dentistry and Endodontics. He's a member of the Federation of Operative Dentistry of India and Karnataka State Dental Association. He has an area of interest in aesthetic and recent advances in endodontics. He is also a specialist in single-sitting root canal treatment and also has many national, international publications and a book to his credit. Over to you, Dr. Sunil Kumar. I think we can start the lecture. Can we, Dr. Narayan, sir?
Good morning, one and all. First, I would like to thank JSS Dental College for providing me an opportunity in this international webinar series. And I also thank Principal Dr. Ravindra sir and our SIG leader, Dr. Anita. And I thank my HOD Narayan Murthy sir. And today we are going to discuss about the epidemiology of diabetes. Just we will go through that, what were the things which were contributed for the current burden of the diabetes disease. As we all know, developing countries, we already having the burden of communicable diseases. Along with this, even now we have these non-communicable diseases also. So this is the plan of presentation with a brief history of diabetes and types and descriptive epidemiology and risk factors, and what are the technologies we have in the management of the diabetes. So to start with the history, diabetes was one of the oldest diseases which was even described in the Egyptian manuscript also. That is almost from 1500 BC. That is, that time they used to mention that it was like great emptying of the urine. That time concept was all the body parts were used to dissolve and they used to come through the urine. Like that, it was the concept. But they know that there is a more urge for the urination. That is polydipsia and polyphagia were the first thing which was identified. So after that, they came into conclusion that these are the common metabolic disorders that share a phenotype of hyperglycemia. So as we know that these polydipsia and polyuria came very well almost 3,500 years ago. And the term diabetes, which in Greek it is called for siphon, and it was first used by the Artaeus, that is in this right side stamp size photo, we can see, right, almost 3,500 years they identified these are the main two symptoms of polydipsia and polyuria. And later in India in the 5th century AD, like they identify the sweet taste of urine. That is, urine contains the sweetness, which was led to the name, like mellitus in Latin means it is meant for honey. Even in Kannada we call, right, madhumeha, madhu means honey. So it led to the name of this diabetes mellitus because of this sweetness in the urine. Then with advances in the chemistry and experimental medicine in 19th century, it was recognized that this sweetness was due to the glucose and the cells in the pancreas played a major role in the disease. So earlier they identified only polydipsia and polyphagia, and in 19th century we came to know that it was due to glucose and the pancreas was involved. The scientist called William Osler, so he noted two group of patients. So one group of patients in coma with the continued glycosuria, even though we reduced the carbohydrate content in their food, the glycosuria continued to occur. But in the other group, when we reduced the carbohydrate content in the food, even the glucose level in the blood came into down. So this gives a theory that not everybody is dependent on the food or the carbohydrates consumed. So there is certain group who needs a insulin, especially insulin. They cannot be controlled by this only carbohydrates. So in 1992, the Banting and Best scientists revolutionized this treatment with the development of the insulin. Especially it was required in the children. Even the data obtained from the Boston demonstrated that the 10-year-old diagnosed with diabetes in this period of 1897 and 1992 was just 1 to 2 years. So the insulin was a very breakthrough invention in that time. So once the insulin was invented in 1945, it has estimated almost the life expectancy was 45 years more compared to 1 to 2 years in earlier 18th century. Even the adults diagnosed with diabetes had an improvement in the life expectancy. We all know, right, now we have almost reached 69 years of life expectancy, but it was like 50, 53, 54 like that before. All because of advancement in the healthcare system. Then later, there were significant challenges to estimating the prevalence of as many adults because many were unaware of the diabetes. Even now, with this much of knowledge also, many people doesn't know. Only when they come to the clinic or the diabetes clinic when the wound is not healing or they are having frequent thirst or the urination. So this was the major challenge because the death appeared or caused due to diabetes or not was the major challenge. The National Health Survey was conducted in 1935 and 1936 in the urban population, where we can see, surprisingly, it was only 0.35% of the prevalence. Exactly almost 85 to 90 years back. It was only 3.5 per thousand population was the prevalence. Even in the Oxford, they found that 1.4% was the prevalence. So just 80 to 90 years back, we had so much less prevalence. So these were the milestones in the timeline. Like I told earlier, in 1899, it was discovered that 19th century pancreas was involved in the diabetes. Then again in 1921, discovery of the insulin, then purification of the insulin, and in 1959 they came to know that type 1 and type 2 are the different entities of the diabetes. Then in 1961 glucagon introduced, diabetes was identified. Then 1966 first pancreas transplant was occurred. In 67 there was a laser treatment for diabetic blinding. As we all know, blindness is one of the major concern across the world. Then 1976 HbA1c test was developed. Then 1978 first human insulin synthesized. Then 86 insulin pen came. Then 1990 insulin external pump came. Then in 2006 first inhaled insulin also was approved by FDA. Then in 2014, as the genetics advanced, even stem cell research for the pancreatic cells was done. So this is the diabetes history and the milestone till now. To start with the types, as we all know, after the history, we know that one is the part which is insulin dependent and the other one is non-insulin. The current American Diabetes Association guidelines states that it can be classified into type 1, type 2, gestational diabetes, and other inherited and syndromic forms like MODY, that is monogenic diabetes of the youth. So this is done by ADA, that is American Diabetes Association. So in this type 1 was the condition which was due to insulin deficiency, where the antibodies were formed against the beta cell of the pancreas, autoimmune mediated. And it came up with the symptoms of hyperglycemia, weight loss, polydipsia, and polyuria, finally leading to diabetic ketoacidosis. That's why even now we are seeing these symptoms in the COVID patients. So COVID patients coming with this polydipsia and polyuria, even diabetic ketoacidosis. So it gives rise to the suspicion that they are suffering from type 1 diabetes mellitus. Then comes the second, type 2 diabetes mellitus. Even this is also characterized by the hyperglycemia, but it is due to the resistance of the insulin. So body will be resistant to the insulin. So this role was better explained by the incretin effect. That is, when we ingest the carbohydrates, the molecules called incretins were released. That is, along with the insulin, these were released, so that we will come to know that what is the performance or the function of the pancreas. Here is the graph, right? The yellow color showing the intravenous glucose. The white line is showing the oral glucose. So when the insulin is secreted, along with that, C-peptide is also secreted. So when we draw a graph, we will get an hump when the oral glucose is taken. So this red portion is called as incretin effect. So C-peptide is also measured to know that, because it is secreted simultaneously with the insulin. So in this chart, we can see that all other types of diabetes only require insulin for control. So only one which requires insulin for survival is this type 1 diabetes. It is the only one disease which requires insulin for survival. All other disease either does not require insulin or they require only for the control. So these are the values from the Harrison textbook. Like we have many classification. So normal glucose is considered fasting blood is less than 100 mg per dl. Pre-diabetics, we take a range of 100 to 125, and diabetes is diagnosed once it is 126 or more. Same HbA1c less than 5.6% is the normal. Pre-diabetics 5.7 to 6.4, and more than 6.5% it is considered as diabetes. So what is the importance of this HbA1c? So this is the glycosylated hemoglobin. So it gives an average of 8 to 12 weeks. As we all know, the lifespan of RBC is 120 days, right? But HbA1c is considered for every 3 months. Considering 1 month of RBCs for forming and dying, we consider 3 months average of this HbA1c. But one problem in this is, as we have Mysore and Chamarajanagar district, we have many hemoglobinopathies in tribal areas, right? So anemia and hemoglobinopathies show falsely lower HbA1c in the results. This is one drawback of the HbA1c. And it gives a snapshot of the 3 months average, whether there is an increase or decrease, any fasting is done, feasting is done. So it gives a snapshot of all 3 months average. So if anybody have these symptoms like urination, fatigue, thirst, blurry vision, delayed, especially this slow healing wounds will be the commonest complaint, and increased hunger, even weight loss, and mainly in men, decreased sex drive, erectile dysfunction, and poor muscle strength. And in women, there will be a frequent UTI, urinary tract infection, yeast infection, that is candida infection, and dry or itchy skin. So it is advised that better to get HbA1c, because these FBS value depends on whatever the food consumed on the previous day. HbA1c value will give the last 3 months average. So with this history and types, we now correlate how the diabetes is distributed, or what is the descriptive epidemiology of the diabetes. So the World Health Organization has estimated in 1980, so there were only 108 million adults living with diabetes in the world, where in 2014 the number almost tripled to 422 million, and the prevalence rose from 4.7% to 8.5%. So almost it was double. And the largest numbers from these countries like China, India, United States, Brazil, Mexico, and Indonesia. So that's why we are in the leading front. China, India, US, all these countries are having much number of diabetes. So what are the key facts is the prevalence has been rising. As we all know, it almost doubled in 2 or 3 decades. And especially earlier, it was known that it was the only rich man's disease. Only rich people used to get the disease of diabetes. But now, when we see the trend, even low and middle income countries are also on high number of diabetes. And it is a major cause of blindness or kidney diseases, even heart disease and stroke, and many amputations. So that's why even low and middle income countries also having the high prevalence. Almost this type 2 diabetes contributed 90% of the cases. Among all the diabetes, that is type 1, gestational, everything, this diabetes type 2 is the culprit of contributing 90% of the cases. That's why it has become the 7th leading cause for the death globally. So as in this image we can see, right, that is 1 person in every 11 persons is diabetic. And even when we look at the risk factor, 1 in 3 is overweight, because overweight we don't have any ill effects on the health, but it will damage in a long term. Unhealthy diet, nowadays we get junk food each and every cities. Like earlier it was only limited to urban areas, that kind. Now in rural areas also we see all these junk foods, physical activity, and even 1 in 10 are obese nowadays. So all these factors contributed for the prevalence of the disease. And one more problem is 4 out of every 5 adults are undiagnosed, and especially they live in low and middle income countries. Like here we can see, right, Southeast Asian region, and this is Western Pacific. So we have almost 4 out of 5 adults with undiagnosed diabetes. Only when they have complication, they will visit the doctor. Or else, if they come in the pre-diabetic stage, at least with the lifestyle modification, they can go back to the normal range. And almost 67% of the adults with diabetes live in these top 10 countries. That is, 70% of the diabetes related health expenditure is spent. Here we can compare, right? India, we have these many adults with diabetes, and the health expenditure is shown in the red thing. Compared to the US, the health expenditure is more compared to the diabetic people. So still our percentage of budget shared for the health needs to be improved in our country. So this one picture gives how the world has progressed in the diabetes from 20 years to 79 years. So here we can see, right, North America and Caribbean, it is only 33% increase. Even Europe, it is 15% increase. What is worrying is all these low and middle income countries like Southeast Asia, it is 74, North Africa and Middle East Africa, it is 96, and whole Africa is 143% increase. We say it is a rich man's disease or the obesity related disease, but even lower and middle income countries is also in the rise. Like in 2019, 88 million are from Southeast Asia. Among this 88 is 77 is from us only, that is from India. That is 1 in every 5 adults with diabetes lives in this region, and 1 in 4 live births affected by hyperglycemia in the pregnancy. So that was the world burden. Coming to the India, how the trend has been changed. When we look back 2 or 3 decades back, we used to have only 1 person or 2 persons in the whole family we know is diabetic. Nowadays we can find each and every house 1 diabetic person will be there. How the trend has been changed. So let's analyze what was the possible reasons in that. As we start eating calorie rich foods like refined sugar or carbohydrates, refined carbohydrates, which used to increase the glycemic content in the blood. While the addition of the protein rich food, like we left almost eating sprouts or the beans or seeds, right? So addition of this protein rich food or dairy products in the meal helped in reduction of the risk of diabetes. So that's why when we imagine nowadays people are consuming like less number of vegetables and the fruits. And in India, when we compare this West Bengal and Kerala, where people consume more non-vegetarian food than the other states. because the vegetarian diet helps in the diabetes management, which makes the body sensitive to the insulin hormone. In the next graph, I am going to show how this has been changed. So, National Family Health Survey 4 conducted by the Government of India. Here we can compare these two maps. When we analyze in GIS, that is Geographical Information System, and this color coding has been done. Wherever the heat is more or the prevalence is more, it is depicted in the red color, and wherever the prevalence of diabetes is less than 3.5, they are in green in color. So when we observe, all these coastal regions are red in color, and this part of India has less number of diabetes prevalence. When we compare same with the food consumption, wheat versus rice. So when we draw a line across this Indian map, we can see the Karnataka 69, Kerala 79, Tamil Nadu 85, and Andhra Pradesh 92, and Northeastern almost 99, 100 and 97 are mostly rice dependent compared to the Rajasthan, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Punjab, Haryana. So here we can see it goes to minus 95 compared to wheat and rice. So this is the food comparison, food consumption between wheat and rice. Same thing we can see in a GIS map of the India, which shows if we draw a line from here to here, this part is almost red. That may be the one factor contributing for making India diabetes capital. And when we look at the same NFHS data, which was done on the prevalence of vegetarians. So here we can see, right, in 2005-6, Karnataka is in the prevalence of 10 to 20% were vegetarians. But in the year 2015 and 16, Karnataka has become less than 10% in vegetarians, both in men also and in women also. It has shifted from here, women were more than 20% vegetarian in Karnataka, that is in 2005 and 6, which has been reduced to 10 to 20% in 2015 and 16. So even the consumption of vegetables and the fruits has been decreased. So this line shows that even the diabetes is also more in this part of country. Where vegetarians are more, even the prevalence of diabetes is less than 3.5%. So with that knowledge, next we move on to the risk factors. Basically for the type 1, these are the risk factors, that is family history, environmental factors, and these are the factors which are in still under research, like dietary pattern. Even early exposure to cow's milk is related to type 1. Then exposure to gluten. That's why nowadays we see, right, gluten-free bread diet or bakery products. And microbiomes, even vitamin D deficiency, there is a research going on to link between the type 1 diabetes. So all other factors like age more than 45 years, obesity, high blood pressure, steroids, and Asians. We Asians are like Indians are 4% more of risk compared to the Europeans for the development of the diabetes. That's why we should be more careful compared to the Western part like European countries, because we are by birth inborn 4 times higher risk for developing the diabetes. So what are the factors for type 1 is, earlier I told that it is a immune reaction where the beta cells gets damaged, and it can be identified with a genetic marker located on the chromosome 6, that is HLA complex. On this particularly, the family history we can see either the parent, brother, sister will be there with type 1 diabetes, and mainly it affects children, teenagers, and the young adults. And one more important thing is even the viral infections may trigger type 1 diabetes mellitus, like German measles, Coxsackie virus, and even mumps virus can trigger the type 1 diabetes mellitus. Type 2, as I already told, we are almost, sorry, type 1 only. One more thing important is, earlier I told, right, cow's milk. Cow's milk given at a very young age is linked to the development of the type 1 diabetes mellitus. And especially if father is diabetic compared to the mother, the child developing is slightly higher risk compared to the mother of type 1 diabetes. But in the type 2, it is also an hereditary, but mainly it is because of this all westernization, lifestyle choices, and even the food choices. Nowadays, we call, right, urbanization and industrialization. Mainly people started working in offices rather than fields. And even the diet also has been shifted. That is less number of physical activity, consuming more number of calories, and larger portion, which is not necessary to survive, which can lead to the increase in BMI. So this is the age 45. Nowadays, now we are seeing even 35 years also is at risk of developing type 2 diabetes mellitus. Especially after this COVID lockdown and all, increase in the body weight and obesity has led to the people moving on to the pre-diabetic stage. And other causes also like gestational diabetes and polycystic ovarian syndrome is also linked to the type 2 diabetes mellitus, because all of those will cause insulin resistance. So these are the protective factors and these are the risk factors like smoking, coffee, blood pressure, even the depression, skipping the breakfast is also linked as a risk factor for developing type 2 diabetes mellitus. Many people nowadays we can see those who skip the breakfast. So that is also linked to the development of the type 2 diabetes mellitus. And consumption of these polyunsaturated fatty acids and maintaining the lipid profile as a protective factor for this type 2 diabetes mellitus. So these are the left side which are showing modifiable risk factors, and these are the non-modifiable risk factors for the diabetes. Like genetics, we cannot do anything. If family history we have, we cannot do anything. Race and ethnicity, no role to play. Increasing age, we cannot prevent. History of gestational diabetes, we cannot do anything. Only thing we can modify is increase physical activities by controlling the obesity and overweight, poor dietary habits, and maintaining the hypertension and stopping the smoking. All these factors we can modify or avoid. So next important concern is pre-diabetes. Why it is important is, as in secondary prevention we tell, right, early diagnosis and treatment is the key to the success of controlling the disease. So in the pre-diabetic stage, when we identify and correlate with the hypertension and serum lipids along with the overweight, so we can arrive that the person is in a stage of pre-diabetic, and if the interventions are started at the early stage, easily they can be prevented. Like unhealthy diet, extra weight, especially in the abdomen. Why is abdominal fat increases the insulin resistance. So especially abdominal fat, like BMI and waist to hip ratio, both are equally important. Waist to hip ratio is also to be maintained. And especially smoking, because the nicotine in the cigarette decreases the sensitivity of the cells to the insulin. So like that, the glucose content in the blood will be increased, and other chemicals in the cigarette cause inflammation. So again, they will affect this insulin action. That's why smoking has to be stopped among the diabetic persons. And other special populations with this diabetes are, one is gestational diabetes. Why it is worrying is, soon after the delivery, the sugar level will come to the normal. But another 10 years, they are at 50% increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes in the future. So that's why this gestational diabetes mellitus has to be given importance, and education has to be given to the mothers. And others like corticosteroids, use antipsychotics, and even for the HIV infection, what we give antiretroviral drugs have shown the contribution for the development of the diabetes. That's why nowadays it is common, right? For all TB patients, we check for diabetes. For all HIV patients, we check for diabetes, and it is vice versa. So this is the image showing how gestational diabetes affects. So even the infant of the woman with gestational diabetes has the genetic predisposition to the obesity and diabetes in the adulthood. So if any mother is having gestational diabetes, we have to advise even the mother also to maintain the weight, and even the kid also, because kid is more prone for obesity and development of the obesity in future. So what all these types of diabetes causes effects on the health are, one is the major concern is damage to the heart and the blood vessels. So once the blood vessels and the nerve damage has been occurred, they can lead on to the blindness or foot ulcers or even strokes. As we all know, nowadays many diabetic patients are also requiring the dialysis. So all these are the health impact of these diabetic types. Coming to the recent trends, that is COVID-19 and diabetes, how the diabetic people are affected in COVID-19 is, the two reasons in the research what they found us, one is stress due to the infection, where cytokine storm is also known to make the body insulin resistant. That's why diabetic people has to be given more care in this COVID time. And the infection even can be linked to the destroying of beta cells in the pancreas. Many patients come up with the symptoms of diabetic ketoacidosis. Many COVID patients have this kind of presentation. Once they are treated with the insulin and other oral hypoglycemic agents, then they can be converted into normal type 2 diabetes mellitus. So that is one finding in the COVID-19 in relation to diabetes. So what WHO is doing in controlling this diabetes? One thing, they release frequently this global report on diabetes, where it will help the governments and the individual doctors that what is the trend and how it is moving. And they have made a global strategy on diet and physical activity on health. That is how much physical activity has to be done and how the control has to be done. Various modules have been developed and they are available free for the download and reading. And these modules will help all these policy makers. That is how much budget separately have to be kept for this maintenance of the diabetes mellitus. Because in developing countries and countries like India, where we have a problem in budgetary allocation, right? So we can use the existing resources. Like we have a wonderful infrastructure for the treatment, like DOTS strategy, what we use those human resources only can be controlled, and this diabetes also can be controlled, especially NCD clinics. So how the prevention can be done is, one is by having the healthy diet, physical activity. I think everybody knows, right? That is 30 minutes per day or 150 minutes per week is the recommended thing. and maintaining the weight, that is especially around the abdomen. Abdominal obesity has to be curbed. Then checking blood glucose if in doubt and following the medical advice. What government has to do is they have to ensure better data. Like especially country like ours, we don't have much number of data linked to the census compared to the US, where all the health data is linked to the census, and providing healthy environments. Like in European country, one city has included the cycling track all over the city. So that led to the decrease in the percentage of this all NCDs. Like even Mysore also started this train, right? But they started train, but separate lane is not there. Once everything is done, providing the healthy environment for the population, the government can also help in the management of the diabetes. One more important last thing is how we can use technology in the diabetes management. One is medical technology we can use, and the other one is artificial intelligence we can use. Like we have many number of apps in the management of diabetes, and even the JSS Academy of Higher Education and Research has made this app called Diaguru, where the patients can easily download the diabetes app, which will help in the management of their diabetes mellitus, and they can use the things like daily inputs, prescriptions, even they can chat with the doctor, their reports will be stored. Especially many patients doesn't know what was the sugar level 3 months back or last year. Once they go on keeping in the app, so anytime, anywhere, they can generate the reports of their this thing. Like that, medical technology can be utilized in the management of the diabetes. And even especially old people, they forget about the tablets, right? Daily reminders can be set for the kind of medicines they take. That is medical technology and use of apps in the management of diabetes. One more is we are developing this artificial intelligence in the diabetes risk management or the risk prediction. So this website, once it is launched, people can use that they are at what level of risk in the diabetes. So it will give a score like this, 6 score they will get. It will show moderate risk. Your risk of diabetes complication is moderate. Should exercise regularly, get your sugar level checked regularly, and proper diabetic diet. So these scores will come whatever on the data provided by the diabetic patients. And HbA1c is 7 means it will show red exclamatory mark, and the particular advice will be given on the right side. If exercise is done, that is 150 minutes per week, the green tick will come that portion of the management is good. And even BMI, if it is 27.3, it will show red and it is classified as obese, and what has to be done, it will be provided in the guidelines. Even the patients can calculate their calories, how much calories they are taking. So this is the thing, the use of medical technology and the artificial intelligence in the management of diabetes mellitus. So technology is almost free nowadays. Internet is we are having, so better to make use of these technologies in the control of diabetes mellitus. So with this, I complete my talk on the epidemiology of diabetes.
Thank you, sir. I think we'll finish Dr. Suneet's lecture and then have the discussion. I think that would be more apt instead of intervening with you.
Yes, ma'am.
If you have anything about the diabetic portion per plate, you can tell, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Just I wanted to tell, frequently all diabetic persons have doubts that what kind of fruit we should eat. So one advice is just add one piece of a fruit or half cup of fruit salad in the plate. Don't go for what kind of fruits, sugar content or the glycemic index and all. Better to advise that whatever the fruit, just advise one piece of food. And this plate portion we can see here, right? All these carbohydrates should form 1/4 of the plate, and protein should form another half of the plate. The whole plate, when we take, the almost half portion should be our vegetables. Like earlier I told, right, we have left eating vegetables and fruits. Daily one fruit and one vegetable should be there in the diet. And all these fats and oils, like whatever non-healthy we call it, right, fried items and all, they should be only this much in their plate compared to the all others. So if this method is followed, easily they can control the diabetes.
Thank you, Dr. Sunil, sir.
Thank you.
Over to Dr. Sunit Shetty, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I'm audible, right?
Yes, sir.
I'll share the content once. Is it visible, my slides?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Shipra. Very good afternoon to everybody. My colleague has spoken, I think, in detail about diabetes. My job is to speak about the oral aspects. Coming on to the epidemiology of diabetes and oral diseases. Good afternoon, everybody. Coming on to the brief introduction. I think, as Dr. Sunil said, that diabetes is one of the most deadliest diseases that has been affecting us, all mankind, and especially in the COVID situation, again, it has come to the forefront. And the clinical importance, whether it is related to oral health, becomes very, very important. And in such a situation, it is important that epidemiology plays a very important role. I would like to say that the content of my presentation is taken from a review article that is written by Dr. Wenchi S. Broganki. She's a faculty in the Department of Periodontics and Oral Medicine Department, University of Michigan, USA. Here she has very elaborately told us the detailed relationship between diabetes and oral health. Epidemiology itself plays a very important role in this. It is a very important part of medicine which deals with the incidence, distribution, and possible control of diseases and other factors relating to health and forms a cornerstone. It helps in shaping policy decisions, evidence-based practices, identifying risks for diagnosing diseases. So with this brief introduction, I would like to share my first slide that is from the World Health Organization. It is estimated that almost 3.5 billion people suffer with some sort of oral disease. But the funny part is more than 1 million people don't know that they have some problem at all. The basic thing is that many people, even if they have some sort of oral infection, they are not aware of it. The next slide again is from the World Health Organization. Here they have highlighted the different countries as low, middle, and high income groups. As you can see on the left, the blue is the low, the blue is the high, that is less than 30%. Green is 30 to 60%. Yellow is 80 to 90%. And India is in a green zone. That is, we are a middle income group. Basically, the importance of this is that universal health coverage is not covered in these countries. So we have to pay from our pocket itself. So these are the countries that have health coverage with them. These include North America, Australia, Europe, parts of UAE. So these basically, the dental health insurance is covered in their system itself, so they don't have to pay anything from their pocket. So the question of why we have to study oral disease, not only because it has a financial burden, but also because it does relate to some sort of manifestation in the mouth. So there is a definite oral systemic link between the impact of oral disease and general health and quality of life. Overall, so with this brief, diabetes, as I think over the period of 2-3 days, everyone is going to speak about diabetes in detail. As an oral health care professional, we should have some basic knowledge about diabetes. It is basically a systemic disorder due to deficiency in the pancreas, due to the body to not able to use insulin, type 1, type 2, and type 3. Type 1 is the juvenile or the insulin dependent. Type 2 is the non-insulin dependent. And type 3 is the gestational type. So the basic overall goal for any dental professional should be to introduce attention to detail, have a good novel health care, and thereby contributing to a improved quality of life. Coming on to the risk factors. There are many risk factors which are involved in this diabetes. They include the biological mechanisms, the demographic areas, and other behavioral patterns. Coming on to the oral disease per se, being an endodontist, it becomes very difficult to speak about epidemiology and other things, but when you come to your field, it is easier. So we'll go to the oral diseases per se. Diabetes per se does not cause all these diseases, but as a byproduct, it does relate to most of them, starting from dental caries. If dental caries is not treated properly, it leads to infection, pulpal necrosis, again, delayed wound healing, gingivitis, periodontitis. Periodontitis, again, is the sixth most important complication of diabetes, which has been accepted by the American Diabetic Association. Candidiasis, oral thrush, general atrophy of the tongue, tooth loss. Tooth loss is basically one of the adjuncts. If people do not maintain their good oral hygiene, it can lead to tooth loss. Taste dysfunction, salivary dysfunction, that is aerostomia or decreased salivation, burning mouth syndrome. These are just some of the oral diseases which I've highlighted. In detail, I think all the periodontists here are going to speak about them. Coming on to the need of why to study the oral disease and diabetes. Diabetes, they basically, as a oral health care worker, it is important for us to assess them, give a proper assessment, individually check the teeth, all surfaces, comprehensive oral health care that includes twice checkup in a year, proper brushing, proper flossing, and incremental uses of mouthwashes. Coming on to the most important, dental caries. Dental caries is an infectious microbial disease that causes dissolution and destruction of both the organic and inorganic tooth structure. This per se is not a direct relation to diabetic patients, but it has been noted that it does affect them. I will just like to say some few studies which have been quoted by Dr. Venchi et al. This is from Goodison et al. Here she chose pediatric patients in which she took 837 patients, in which she checked basically the saliva, whether they had any glucose level or not. The salivary microbiome is altered in the presence of high salivary glucose concentration. Periodontitis. Periodontitis has been listed as the sixth complication of diabetes. The prevalence of severe periodontitis in diabetics and non-diabetics can be related to almost 59.6 to 39%. Type 1 diabetes that is seen in pediatric patients. Despite similar oral hygiene habits and amounts of plaque, children with high will have more gingivitis, gingival bleeding, and more calculus. Coming on to some slides regarding this graph illustrates basically the prevalence of periodontitis in different age group individuals. The x-axis is the individual's age group, that is from 30 to 44, 45 to 64, and 65 and above. The y-axis shows the prevalence. It has been taken from the same article, that is the National Health and Nutritional Examination Survey. As you can see that the amount of people in the age group of 30 to 44 are much more higher. Blue is uncontrolled diabetic, that is above HbA1 levels above 7%. Controlled is 5.1 to 7, and normal is less than 5%. Again, coming to the gender, it has been seen that diabetes is seen predominantly in the male. This graph depicts the same thing. Again, it has been taken from the same article, National Health and Nutritional Examination Survey. Here, the number, when they compared basically the prevalence of diabetes in both male and female, it was seen that it was higher in the male population. Coming to periodontitis as a sixth complication, that has been universally accepted that as part of the Diabetic Federation, that it is the sixth complication of diabetes itself, even though there's some doubt whether it does affect these pediatric patients. So this is another study which has been taken from the same article, that is Scannapy et al. In 2017. She basically compared 3 different pediatric groups in the age group of 10 to 19. Each subject was subjected to oral health survey, received clinical oral examination, and provided unstimulated saliva. So more gingival recession had been observed in the children with type 1 diabetes and may be related to elevated glucose levels. While previous data showed that salivary glucose levels in adults was less. So coming on to the treatment of this periodontitis itself, non-surgical treatment that basically involves scaling of the teeth, removing the plaque calculus, thereby reducing the amount of HbA1 levels. This had been reduced by 0.23 to 0.3. So this reference has been taken from Diabetics in America 3rd edition. Coming on to tooth loss. Tooth loss per se is not a direct relation, but over a period of time, as people are not able to maintain the teeth, they tend to lose them. So this article has been, according to this reference, basically they compared the number of the teeth that were lost in diabetic type 1 and type 2. Here they concluded that the number of teeth lost were less in type 2 diabetic patient, that is 37.8 compared to 65.6. Some more articles related to the research of tooth loss. These articles have been taken again from the same reference. In a Japanese study, they found by Saito et al. In the Journal of Epidemiology, the risk for metabolic syndrome was 54% greater in 75 to 80% old Japanese people. Again, another study had been done in the Finnish population. Here, the tooth loss was strongly associated with impaired glucose metabolism in middle-aged Finnish group. Coming on to the global burden of these statistics basically imply the total amount of impact on the economy itself. As it has seen that this study again is taken from the same article, the global impact of direct dental cost comes up to almost 298 billion. So the indirect cost can be related to 144 billion. That is if they are diagnosed properly. Periodontitis itself is a very expensive treatment protocol. It is more expensive compared to gingivitis, other dental maintenance procedures. Coming down to the global burden of the disease itself, it has been estimated that if periodontal treatment can be done properly, the total amount of cost per percentage of a patient can be reduced. That is almost 1799 to 1599. Therefore, a total reduce of almost $400. Now, all these consensus had come in such a way so that the amount of dental impact could be reduced. So basically, they said that in the end, they came to a consensus that during dental treatment, other screenings could also be done, basically screening for diabetes, hypertension, and hypocholestemia. Quality of life. Quality of life, again, it is another protocol. It is another end product of diabetes itself. This is another study which has been taken from a journal. Here, basically, they assessed 764 patients. Here, they concluded that even though they were diabetic, they were unaware of the elevated risk of oral disease and concerns regarding the negative impact of oral and quality of life. This is another study which has been taken from Brazil. Here also, it's not very visible. So here also similarly, 302 patients had been taken. It had been assessed that they had diabetes, and as a result of which, decreased quality of life. Xerostomia is another condition which is caused due to lack of saliva. I'm sorry, oral dryness, hyposalivation. So this also leads to decreased quality of life. Oral health care and awareness. Coming on to oral health care and awareness, as there is limited knowledge of the patient itself, there is no appreciation of the role of the general health and diabetes management. Poorer home oral hygienes can be done. So the guidelines, some certain guidelines had been given for interprofessional diabetic management. This had been given by the American Diabetic Association in conjunction with the European Federation of Periodontology. Basically, they said that the dentist should provide a periodontal examination as part of the routine referrals for initial diabetes and management. So basically, it involves early diagnosis, prevention, co-management of diabetes and periodontitis. So based on certain evidence, it can be concluded that people who have diabetes, this is another article which has been taken from the National Health Institute. Here, people who have diabetes know the disease can harm the eyes, nerves, kidneys, heart, and other important systems of the body. But do you know that the diabetes can cause a problem in the mouth? So basically, they had formulated a research plan how to implement it. This includes interdisciplinary approach in all societies, that is medical and dental. Establishment as periodontitis as a complication, sixth complication which has been established. Introduce oral screening and education. Introduce treatment at the pre-diabetic and diabetic stage, therefore reducing the global expenditure. So to conclude, epidemiology is an elemental part of oral diseases to study the link and bring oral practices and should be incorporated in general healthcare plans. Staff and individuals should receive necessary training to recognize how to identify and best support health practices. Thank you for your patient hearing.
Dr. Sunil and Dr. Suneet have given an overall outlook of the epidemiology. And looking at what Sir has been talking about, Dr. Sunil Sir, the risk of liability of a practice is very, very important. What we learn out of this epidemiology, this is what I was thinking of. Because when we look at all the errors that we do, that we or any person does, or a medical professional does, there could be some amount of risk with that, with our profession. It could be adverse event, something like we've not looked at the blood sugar levels and gone ahead with treatment, where the patient has hypoglycemia and come across, the area is not healing well, especially in our surgical procedures. So it is very, very important to us because we can get sued. Legal risks are also included with our profession, be it medical or dental. Now, why is it important that we go through this epidemiology? It gives us an outlook on, the prevalence of that particular disease aspect, whether we have to look for that particular signs and symptoms or that particular oral changes within the oral cavity. If we look at, if we have a patient coming in, not diagnosed. So if we look at intraoral features, we could have, like Dr. Suneet was mentioning, caries, or like Dr. Amita Ramesh was mentioning about candidiasis, or sticking of the mouth mirror to the mucosa, or any other findings of these kinds. So it is important that we orient our dentists or a group of our patients that if they have that kind of lesions or problems, that they come back to us, or dentists or physicians, that if the patient happen to go to them with these kind of problems, then to be able to identify, look out, advise for the appropriate analysis, look out for the blood sugar levels, go in for an interdisciplinary intervention, and help control the global burden of either death, disease, or whatever is concerned. So if we look at all the epidemiological factors, we can actually look at these unpreventable adverse events, something like hypoglycemic attack, or something like non-healing areas. So we can look at all the risk factors, since diabetes is also listed as risk factor. We can look at this. And looking at the dental professionals, we need to actually introduce all these as separate book chapters, or separate, like we're doing a CD or anything of those kinds, where they can enhance their knowledge. Or we can also have, like Dr. Sunil Kumar has worked on his PhD, an app where you upload a few details of oral hygiene care, because Dr. Sunil Kumar sir and Dr. Narayan Murthy sir would know what to do for community medicine, community part for the diabetes in general. But what I would suggest is, like to both of them, that we instill in their app that oral hygiene practices has to be improved by the patient, because now that periodontitis is listed as the sixth complication of periodontitis. So that is very, very important. This is what I feel. So coming to the errors, we all do some kind of medical errors, like I was talking of. So we have these omission and all these medical errors that we normally have in our profession, the commission, the errors of execution, and the adverse effects that can be having, that we can have with cross prescriptions. So it's very, very important that this epidemiology allows us to instill in us as dentists or as physicians those kind of oral aspects or the general aspects, and how to go about introducing, like Dr. Sunil Kumar said, AI, the artificial intelligence, how we can use it across the biomedical part to get it across to the masses, be it dentists, doctors, and the others. On a humorous note, Dr. Gururaj Rao sir was mentioning something about Ganapati had diabetic problem, and he went on to have these Jambupala as treatment. So Sunil Kumar sir, you have rightly stressed on the nutritive aspect that is very vital for all of us, the coastal areas, the rice eaters, the wheat eaters, I mean the roti eaters and things like that. So as we say, it gives a picture to an overall prevalence of all the disease lesions. So we can identify what is required for us. So we avoid the error of commission, omission, errors of execution, the adverse effect, the near misses, the pre-treatment protocols, like in the previous lecture session that we had on the doubts of whether it should be compulsory. So what I would suggest is, when we have all these features, we make it compulsory that we introduce a diabetic package of biochemical tests or diagnostics, be it blood tests or the salivary tests. And it also will help us, open new avenues for the other research area that might be required. So the post-treatment follow-up, like there were a few questions in the last session, whether post these glycosylated hemoglobin levels. I feel that these patients should also be followed up, because the recurrence could also be possible, considering that oral hygiene practices should be stressed upon, which is quite important. So sir was saying something about 51% increase by 2045. So that is quite a lot, considering that we need to look into that area and include and say we have to reduce that because we have the economic burden that Dr. Sunil and Dr. Suneet Shetty was stressing on. So the economic burden that is there in our world or in India is quite a bit compared to the other diseases also. So in our dental aspect, some aspects of insurance covers dental treatment, could be fractures, but they do not cover anything related to gum disease or caries. It's not like it's universalized. So probably we will have to intrude into the insurance agencies and probably instill those kind of changes where they also give some amount of money, if not totally, for dental treatment, which would probably reduce their glycemic status as per research, which says that with SR3, that is scaling and root planing, non-surgical gum therapy or periodontal therapy, there is proof that the glycosylated hemoglobin or the blood sugar level reduces to near normalcy as compared to the other groups. We have quite a few of research growing quite a few in our JSS Dental College as elsewhere. So I think this is a very important factor to stress upon. Dr. Narayan Murthy, sir.
Yes, madam. So actually, first of all, I am thankful to the organizers mainly for giving me an opportunity to become the panelist of today's session, and also happy that the SIG group of JSS Dental College and Hospital Diabetes and Oral Care, where they are involved in this conducting this program. So I'm very happy. And also I came to know that recently that even in the dental college where they started the diabetic clinic. So it's very important. Even in our hospital also recently where we have started the diabetic clinic. So what is our intention is mainly under one roof where we wanted to provide all the healthcare facilities and also the specialists mainly. So where we need the cardiologist, where we need the diabetologist, endocrinologist, podiatrist mainly, the dietitian. So under one roof where if you are going to provide all these consultants, so that it will be easier mainly for the diabetic patients when they come for the follow-up and all. So and also to give the health education, this is very important. So if we provide under one roof all these facilities, then definitely where we can provide a good care mainly to the diabetic patients. And also I'm happy that even our colleague Dr. Sunil Kumar, where he has shared about his work, what he has done during his PhD, and now where we are planning to have one more app related to the artificial intelligence. I think your idea is good. So even where we can consider that, even where we try to include that part about the oral health. So till now where we are not mentioned about the importance of the oral health, I think where we can take, we can include this part also. I think it will be useful mainly for the diabetic patients also, so that where they can avail these facilities. Already we are providing the facilities in our Medars block, where in our JSS Urban Health Center and also in Suttur Hospital, JSS Hospital at Suttur. So mainly from the JSS Dental College, even where they come periodically and where they do the work. I think even this will be helpful mainly for the diabetic patients. And now mainly in the sub-centers where we call as the health and wellness centers, and also in all the primary health centers where we are maintaining the NCD register mainly. So where we are having the data of all those people who are having the diabetes, hypertension and all, mainly those who are residing in that geographical area. So it will be helpful mainly for the health workers also, mainly for the screening and also mainly to give the health education. And some of our what we are doing from our department, even now where we are having the MPA students also, apart from the MD postgraduates. So where we are taking help from them and where we are conducting the survey and other things, mainly in our Beniminta Primary Health Center area and also in the Medars block. So these are some of our work, what we are doing in our health centers. I think Dr. Sunil has nicely covered all the topics, starting from the history, where he has covered about the epidemiology, what all is the different types of how we are going to classify the diabetes mellitus, and about the problem statement in the world and in India, and also the importance of the glycemic index, and what all is the risk factors which plays a very important role in the diabetes. It may be the modifiable and non-modifiable risk factors. So I think in the short span of time, various covered more information, I think. And it is very difficult to cover all the topics also. So I think he has done his work nicely. And even I think Dr. Sunil Shetty has also mentioned about the what all the problems what we see mainly among the diabetic patients in the oral health. So like he has mentioned about even the main complaint will be the dryness of mouth. So many people where they come with history of the dryness of mouth, I think that is a time where we should screen mainly for the diabetes. So where we have to create an awareness mainly among the people about the symptoms of diabetes, and so that where they can come at the correct time, and where we can give the treatment, proper treatment at the earliest, so that where we can prevent the complications also.
So can we take the questions now?
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
There's one question by Dr. Shivadatta Arti. It's aimed at you, Dr. Sunil. How better documenting the diabetic spread and such demographic and epidemiological studies help in the management of diabetes? While researching about the epidemiology of diabetes in our nation, it really concerned me that I could find very little data on the same. Should more focus on and resources be invested on this area alongside clinical management? So, sir, kindly throw some light on this.
Actually, in India, in the 2010 only, where we started the national program mainly for the prevention of coronary vascular disease, stroke, and the diabetes, NCDPS, what we call as. So when they started in 2010, where they selected about 100 districts, even in Karnataka, Shimoga was one district, where they started to have all the data mainly about the NCD, and now it is implemented all over the nation. And as I told you, like even in the health centers where they are supposed to maintain a separate register mainly for the NCD clinic. So usually in the afternoon time, where we advise them to come to the health center during afternoon, so that the health workers can give more advice. And in some of the health centers already, even they started the yoga therapy also with the naturopathy, even where they started about the yoga therapy also. I think in even Banimantap, in our just beside our college, where they started the yoga therapy also. So where the yoga instructor will come once in a week, and where they teach about the yoga. So even they say that even this also helps mainly not only in case of diabetes, and also for the hypertension and other NCD. I think where we are having the sufficient data related to this all over the nation. So that's where they can go through it, and where they can avail the data, I think. Sunil, you can add more.
Add anything?
Yes, ma'am. Like all the developing countries, mainly they doesn't have the data on diabetes. Recently, as sir told, NPCDCS national program has been started by the government. Now they are giving importance for NCD clinics even in all the community health centers and primary health centers, where particularly they are having a dedicated non-communicable disease clinic. So now we can expect or have a hope that we can have the data on diabetic or related whatever the community has the prevalence and all. So now it is increasing.
So I also stress that there is some thing called as the NAN survey, which goes on to a higher level of survey with thousands of research subjects involved. So probably we need to install that kind of system in our Indian group or in any research group, where there is a wider
Yes,
research and multi-centric research also. That is what I feel.
Especially many countries and researchers, they have made a cohort of diabetic people where they are going to follow them over a period of 5 to 10 years. So
Yes,
if we have such kind of cohort, with much number of diabetic people numbering in thousands, more than 10,000. If we develop the basic profile and cohort of like that, we can have our own data in regarding to diabetes.
Yes, sir, we agree with you. So the next question is, as far as the southern part of India is concerned, speaking within very limited knowledge, the majority of the population is greatly dependent on carbohydrate-rich diets. What is the impact of such a diet in diabetes? So how can we tackle this?
Yes, madam. As I told in the nutrition part, mainly we can divide our plate. Though we are depending on the rice on the majority, we can limit that portion as 1/4 of the plate. The other half of the plate should be our fruits and vegetables. It's not like we are staying in South India only where rice is the staple diet. We cannot advise all the South Indians to eat chapati. So whatever we eat in a moderate direction and keeping 100-kilometer radius from us, those vegetables which are available 100 kilometers or grown within 100 kilometers of our radius, if we consume that kind of food, it would be beneficial than willing to consume the Western kind of diet.
So, and how do we go about tackling this? How to get it across to the masses? I think that's what he means. Getting across to the people of South India. That is what he's saying, because we have a huge group of people who are rice eaters or carbohydrate-rich diets. How do we put it across to that group of people to probably plan their diet a little better than what they've been doing all these years? How to introduce a different diet?
Yes, madam. As diabetes itself is the multifactorial causation, as we all know. All factors contribute to that. Main thing, the diet we can control. One is non-vegetarian consumption along with the carbohydrate. When we combine these two, fatty foods also and carbohydrate-rich foods also, they will be danger in the etiology of the diabetes. One thing is we can orient the people towards eating the healthy diet, where vegetables, sprouts, all these seeds were missing. Even the pulses, many of the people have missed in eating their plate. So we can reintroduce what were consumed some 3 decades or 4 decades back in our country. When we look at the food consumed in 1880 or 1990 and all, now it is entirely different. So we can reorient the people that what should be consumed to be healthy.
So I agree with you. So what you're trying to say is, like, we can use the media, like our radio talk sessions, our TV talks, or our social media sections that we have, where we see lots of people, logging in for Facebooks or Twitter, their Instagrams, put out small posters which say what is important for our diet. Or like probably when you go on a community
even handouts
program, so you normally give out those handouts and stress on the importance of diet. So we can reach it across to the masses through your community medicine department or community dental department, which is very, very important to all of us here. I think that answers the question there. We have another question. Since there is a bidirectional relationship existing between diabetes and periodontitis, it goes without saying that there should be interprofessional approaches in the management of diabetes. How far has such interprofessional approaches progressed in our nation? Actually, we have a very small group where you have an interdisciplinary approach, something like our special interest group. I think these special interest groups must be introduced in some of the colleges or most of the colleges. And I also stress that we have something like our diabetic society, our Pulmo society. Maybe we can introduce ourselves as diabetic oral society or something like that. There's a small little panel that is already formed in India, in Delhi. So probably we need to have a bigger platform where the news, like we say, news givers or news spreads, that things are vital, so that we have dentists who actually play a role along with the medical professional, where there is an professional approach, which will help us. One is to reduce the decrease in the quality of life, like QL that Dr. Sunit Shetty was stressing on, because it gets difficult with the complications of diabetes. So an interdisciplinary approach where we refer to the physician or endocrinologist, and we also have a good bank of people who are formed as a forum of people to get the message across, and also reduce the global burden economically also. So I think this is it. Next, we have another question by Dr. T.R. Gururaj Rao. How many diabetic patients are referred to dental department from general medicine department? Medical departments must refer the patients to dental consistently. So we right now in our dental college, where we have our medical college hospital alongside, we have a physician group in our special interest group. So when we have these kind of referrals and we make our physicians oriented towards these kind of oral changes of diabetes, so I think when they are better educated towards the oral changes, I think the referrals should increase. As of now, the referrals have been going well, but I think the referrals would increase in every dental department if we have a physician panel or any private clinics who would refer to a dentist when as a routine, when a diabetic patient is when they find that the patient is diabetic or in a pre-diabetic stage. So we intervene at that particular stage to prevent complications or the other aspects of it. This is what I feel. Dr. Sunit, do you have anything to say?
No, fine. You're busy in the discussion. That's right.
Both of you, I think you have to unmute.
Yes, sir. I think more referrals are required. So I think our community department is doing well. So we also need to introduce that to our physician department, where a patient is diagnosed and they refer immediately to us, irrespective of the patient, whether they complain of any oral changes or not. We can screen the patient, put them on a follow-up at any point of time, prevent the sixth complication of diabetes, and also prevent them going into a poor quality of life. That's what I felt. We have another question. So speaking from my very limited knowledge, the cost of diabetic treatment in our country ranges from rupees 3,000 to 8,000, which further increases when dentistry comes to the picture. Would you please share your views on introduction of diabetic management package, including dentistry, alongside other specialties? So can you brief up on the other specialties? I'll intervene, Sunit, and I will intervene regarding the dental management aspect.
Actually, now mainly in health centers, actually where we are providing the oral hypoglycemic drugs also, anti-diabetic drugs are available in all the health centers, and even in some of the primary health centers, even where they are providing the insulin also. So now where they can avail the antihypertensives, anti-diabetic drugs and all, and even through the Janaushad. So because of our Prime Minister Modi, so now even all these drugs are available at low cost. So where we can educate the people to avail these services mainly, so that it can reduce the burden. Actually, where we say that nearly 15% of the health budget, and also 1/3 of the total income mainly of the people, where it goes towards the out of pocket expenditure, mainly related to the diabetes. So where we have to educate them, mainly where they can avail the services, and even where they can go for the drugs mainly available in the Janaushad and all, so that it can reduce the economic burden mainly.
Dr. Sunit, would you like to add on the dentistry? speaking of diabetic management package in dentistry?
No, as of now, there's no package. No, so once that is implemented, hopefully it can be utilized.
So probably like maybe we need insurance agency, so they partial coverage would be covered, and probably intervene at pre-diabetic stage, or when the physician says diagnose them as diabetic, or in already established or controlled or uncontrolled diabetes, to compulsory go to a dentist and have a follow-up by the dental doctor. And probably since they mentioned about a package, we should mention about the biochemical parameters, the dental treatment. So once like they were talking of xerostomia, what we need to do, how to manage that that aspect of it, how to prevent certain diseases, how to go about preventing that. I think that is very elemental to for our study or for epidemiological aspects of it. We have another question by Dr. Ashwini TS. What ABT intermittent diet for diabetes? Sir?
What?
Dr. Sunil, sir? What ABT intermittent diet for diabetes?
Usually, madam, this intermittent diet is followed by 16/8 kind of hours. That is, when we eat morning breakfast till evening, that is 8 hours fasting will be there. Once we eat in the evening, again 16 hours till the next day, 8 o'clock, there will be an fasting. That's why it is called 16 divided by 8 kind of fasting. So usually for diabetic people, it is not advisable. Only those who are having pre-diabetes or obesity, those who want to lose their body weight, for them it is advisable to go for intermittent fasting. And all these alternate methods of losing weight is not permanent. Once we leave that part of 16/8 intermittent fasting, again the weight will come back. So rather than advising intermittent fasting, better we should advise small and frequent meals compared to it.
So I have a question. There's some talk about this keto diet and all those diets that come by, having that egg continuously. Does it really help? Or like you were saying, a plant diet introduced by a dietitian or by you is more apt than this keto diet. I have not read many articles on this keto diet.
Even my friends tried, madam. I have own friends following this keto diet. So when we follow high fat and low carbohydrate diet, which is not our staple diet. So our staple diet almost have carbohydrate in our major meal plan. When we avoid all those carbohydrates and we switch on to high fat diet, it will be a short-term plan where we have a feeling of weight reduction. But once we switch back to our normal diet, whatever the weight lost will starts appearing back. And in the long-term complications, even these kind of diets affect the kidneys also. So first of all, diabetic people will be at risk of developing kidney diseases. So if they do all these intermittent fasting or keto diet or protein rich diet, again it will have a harsh effect on their kidneys. So better to avoid all those things.
So there's another question by Dr. T.R. Gurraj Rao. Dr. Sunil has given a very good talk. It's a compliment, sir. I am told that even eating chapatis or wheat causes diabetes. Eating maida is dangerous. There is one, I remember reading it in Davidson. I think that's our general medicine textbook, isn't it? That wheat is diabetogenic. I have read, but it must have been very old edition of this thing, sir, of Davidson. So what is your...
I compared those statistics, madam, both India maps.
Okay, sir.
where states with less number of diabetes prevalence and where we have more number of diabetes prevalence.
Yes, sir. So eating maida is dangerous, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
So I think we should hold a session on diet aspects for the patients. Probably since sir has designed a wonderful app where he has a patient group there. So we orient them on Zoom and have them, from our SID team, given them diet counseling and something orientation about our oral diseases and planning out, when to come to a physician or to a dentist. We have another question
And
by
take the help from the nutrition also. So mainly where they can give advice about the diet, about all those things.
Yes, sir. I think we
Where
can
can
do
take
that even in our lockdown, because that is very important. Like sir was stressing that lockdown days, people are putting on weight. So we can actually launch a Zoom meeting with the patient phone bank that probably Dr. Sunil Kumar sir would have.
They are
With his
conducting
app.
the program on 29th and 30th.
Yes, sir.
So for 2 days, I think they are conducting the program mainly from the nutrition department.
Yes, sir.
So I think where they are going to discuss all these things, I think so.
So that would be important for us. Maybe we can put that across on our group. So there's another question: difference in GI between wheat and rice.
Yes, madam. Usually these rice have the GI of more than almost 70. Or how much we increase the polish or refinedness in the rice, the GI will glycemic index of that will go on increasing above 70. But when we consume whole grain wheat or wheat chapatis, the glycemic index will be of less than 50. So almost much difference is there between the rice and the wheat.
Yes, I think this pretty much winds up our question and answer session. So to conclude from my end, I think Dr. Narayan Murthy sir will also have something to say. So there is a growing number of diabetes where we need to intervene. So we intervene at the pre-diabetic stage. And as our community counterparts, they go around orienting people or giving handouts on the importance of diabetes and when to recognize when they have certain symptoms, when to see a doctor, when to see a dentist. And of course, as Dr. Suneet Shetty has put a prevalence data chart in all his PPTs, it is very important that even the patients know or are aware of the oral changes, and all the physicians and doctors alike, so that we go in for an interdisciplinary referral and use artificial or biomedical research to get things across, where we also do that on our dental counterparts. Over to you, Narayan Murthy.
I think where I already told about the importance of the screening mainly. So mainly where we are going to conduct the screening for the high risk group mainly. Those who are having the age of more than 30 years, or those who give the families of diabetes, obese persons, or even when there is hyperlipidemia. So, and even during the time of the pregnancy. So usually, and even nowadays where we can, ample of funds are available mainly for the research, even from our JSSHR also, where they are providing the ample funds mainly for the research towards the diabetes. So that's what even while developing the app by Dr. Sunil Kumar. So even from the JSSHR, where they help mainly for the development of the app. So even where we can avail the facility, and even some of the RSSDI, a national body, even they're also providing the funds mainly to do the research on the diabetes. I think, as I told, like even more number of people where we can form will be involved. As I told, like even from the nutrition department or even from the medicine department. And even from the physiotherapy. So like that, even if we involve from the other departments, and I think it will be helpful mainly for the people who are having the diabetes. And I think in even JSS Urban Health Center, where we're having the data of all the patients who are having the diabetes who are residing in our Medhurst Park. And once in a week, our physician from the JSS hospital, so where they visit and where they give their prescription and all mainly, and even where they give the health education. And even from the nursing students, when they come to the health center, so even where we conduct some of the programs mainly for these diabetic patients about their how to improve their diet, all those things mainly. So with this, I think where we can help the people, so where we can involve other departments also, so that where we can provide the good care mainly for these people.
There were a few questions on oral biofilms, the microbiological aspect and the treatment aspect in our sessions, the morning sessions on the oral disease aspect and epidemiological sessions. I think all of us can log in tomorrow for the treatment lecture by Dr. Sheila Kumar Gujri. And of course, the microbiological section by Dr. Pushparaj Shetty tomorrow. And of course, to the Modi that Dr. Sunil Kumar sir was stressing on the genetic aspects by Dr. Akila Prashant the day after tomorrow. So I think we can pretty much wind up today's sessions, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Over to you, Shipra.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Sunil Shetty, sir. Thank you, Dr. Sunil, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Narayan Murthy, sir, and thank you, Anita, ma'am. I kindly request Dr. Sunil, sir, to accept the certificate as a token of appreciation. Dr. Sunil Shetty, sir, please accept the certificate as a token of appreciation. Dr. Narayan Murthy, sir, please accept the certificate as a token of appreciation.
Thank you.
Dr. Anita, ma'am, please accept the certificate as a token of appreciation.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We are done with our day 2 programs of this webinar series. I request you all to kindly join us tomorrow at 10 a.m. for the upcoming sessions. Thank you.